Bible reading continues in Hebrews 11, very close to where we left off last week. So we're starting in this 11th chapter with verse number 32, and we'll read a couple verses on into chapter 12. And what more should I say? For time would fail me to tell of Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, of David and Samuel and the prophets, who through faith conquered kingdoms, administered justice, obtained promises, shut the mouths of lions, quenched raging fire, escaped the edge of the sword, won strength out of weakness, became mighty in war, put foreign armies to flight. Women received their dead by resurrection. Others were tortured, refusing to accept release in order to obtain a better resurrection. Others suffered mocking and flogging, and even chains and imprisonment. They were stoned to death. They were sawn in two. They were killed by the sword, and they went about in skins of sheep and goats, destitute, persecuted, tormented, of whom the world was not worthy. They wandered into deserts and mountains, and in caves and holes in the ground. Yet all these, though they were commended for their faith, did not receive what was promised, since God had provided something better, so that they would not, apart from us, be made perfect. Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and the sin that clings so closely, and let us run with perseverance the race that is set before us. Looking to Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith, who for the sake of the joy that was set before him endured the cross, disregarding its shame, and has taken his seat at the right hand of the throne of God. We begin with a thoughtful question. Who is the one person in all of history you would like to interview? Who would you like to spend 30 minutes with just to ask questions? The reason for asking this question is to get us thinking about who might be our heroes. I suspect that the person you would want to interview is some kind of hero or role model for you. Thinking about heroes in history leads to a story about two famous people who happened to meet each other for the first time. Mark Twain, the author of Tom Sawyer, had the chance to visit with General Ulysses S. Grant at the Grant home. Twain had an inspiration: be honest. So Twain said, "General, I seem to be a little embarrassed. Are you?" Grant smiled, and the conversation was off and running. 12 years later, Twain and Grant met again at a reception for the general in Chicago. The mayor of Chicago made introductions. "General, let me present Mr. Clemens, a man almost as great as yourself." Twain and Grant shook hands. Grant looked at Twain gravely and said, "Mr. Clemens, I am not embarrassed. Are you?" They both laughed and had a great time. Yes, we want to talk about heroes because Paul is talking about heroes. Paul is still talking about faith. He wants to talk about the heroes of the Bible who acted in faith. Paul gives a quick list of some heroes that he calls a great cloud of witnesses. And so he goes off and names Gideon, who trusted God for victory with only 300 men. And then there is Barak. He waited to march until he had heard from God's messenger, Deborah. Then there's Samson. God notices all the hairs in our head, and Samson's the one when some of his hair went missing, so did his strength. And there's also Jephthah, very, very heavy story about Jephthah and his daughter. It's a story that says, be careful when we make promises. And then, of course, there's David. Paul mentions him as a hero. We remember David. He's the songwriter, the captain, and the king. He wrote the shepherd's song. And of course, there's Samuel. Samuel is the one who anointed David, the one who was guided by God to see young David's potential. And then Paul says, and the prophets. And we remember that there's 17 books in the Bible named for the prophets. So there's 17 heroes right there. Now, these are not the only heroes of the Bible. Paul was writing to Hebrews, to the Jewish people, to show them how faith had created leaders in the Old Testament. Paul is showing them how faith could create new Christians in the New Testament. We want to be clear, the great cloud of witnesses is not to be confused with the internet cloud. The internet cloud can save our computer work. It can also be attacked and corrupted. The great witness cloud of Paul's writing, they can save our spiritual work. Now, the great witness cloud, it can be attacked and attempts to corrupt it. But as we see from the list, they endured great hardships, and yet they came through the other side. They remained faithful, and they accomplished God's mission. As we listen to the list of all the attacks and persecutions and hardships, it sounds almost like lions and fires and stones. Oh my. Yes, those heroes were attacked, but they did not give up. We can find two kinds of comfort in these hero stories. First, there is the comfort of the story itself. They faced those incredible odds. They stayed with God, and they made it through to finish their purpose. And then there's also comfort in the cloud. Again, we mean the cloud of witnesses. They are not dead and gone. They are witnesses. So they're still witnesses for God. They're witnesses for us. They've now received their spiritual promised land. So do we ever feel like somebody is watching us? It might be them. The cloud of witnesses might be watching us, cheering us on, answering our prayers for us. You never know who God is going to assign to guardian angel duty. Maybe Gideon is assigned to you this week. Maybe Samson is going to help you lift some heavy weight in your life. And actually, I began to think of a third kind of comfort in knowing about these heroes. Paul says they were not perfect. They persevered, but they were not perfect. They had faith, but they lived a little too soon to have Christ in their lifetime. These Old Testament heroes are among those Jesus went and preached to when Jesus was visiting the dead between Good Friday and Easter. Their faith was not perfected in their lifetime, but in the resurrection of Jesus, they had their chance. Paul explains this when he says they were not yet perfect, since God had provided something better so that they would not, apart from us, be made perfect. They were not perfect yet because they had not yet met Jesus. Jesus was and is the something better. They had good lives. They had good faith. In Jesus, they had the forgiveness that their own heroic record could not provide. Jesus came from the clouds of heaven to the cloud of witnesses to open the door and let them into the ultimate promised land. Jesus welcomed them into the kingdom of heaven. Jesus did for them what he did for us. We might say, but I am not a hero. Maybe not a hero of biblical proportions, but you may be somebody's hero. Is there a child, a grandchild, a spouse, a coworker, a friend who secretly admires what you are doing? Is there something that you have learned from Jesus that you have applied to your life that is making a difference in someone else's life? We may never know who we are inspiring. We may never know who we are helping. We have the same Jesus as the great cloud of witnesses. We have the same something better. That something better invites us to witness in his name. Jesus, the something better, asks us to show something better to the world, to join the great cloud of witnesses. Amen.